I have the pleasure to introduce a workshop by Mary Morrison titled, What Works for You? A Party, a Task, a Title, or a Team? This workshop is focused on understanding motivation that skilled leaders use to achieve desired results. Let me tell you a little bit about Mary. Mary joined Toastmasters in 1998. She recently received her second DTM. I personally had a pleasure to meet Mary when she was a Region 1 advisor for Toastmasters International. By the way, she served not one, but 2 terms as Region 1 advisor. About the workshop. Do you like a party, more responsibility, status, or working with others as recognition for your efforts? This workshop focuses on understanding motivation that skilled leaders use to achieve desired results. Knowing the answers will help you incorporate some key elements to enhance motivation in yourself and in your team. This is particularly timely as we begin our Toastmasters year. This interactive workshop will help you get off to a good start in understanding what motivates yourself and others to achieve common goals. Mary Morrison, what works for you? A party, a task, a title, or a team?
Fellow Toastmasters, fellow guest Toastmasters, do you like a party, a task, a title, or a team? It's kind of a joking way to introduce the concepts of motivation via the kind of recognition we might like. So I'll explain a little bit more about that later, why I chose a party, a task, a title, or a team. But let's talk a little bit about the role of leader and how motivation operates. And I'm going to start with a story. I was vice president of membership in my club, Boldly Growing Toastmasters, last year. And we were having some challenges with membership. And this was before COVID hit. We had dropped due to members moving and members achieving their goals, and maybe even members not getting their goals met in our club. And we were at a low of about 13 members. And as vice president of membership, I realized it was really my responsibility to try to do some kind of membership campaign or contest. And I've had good luck in the past when I've divided our group into teams. Teams competing against each other seem to have a pretty good effect on motivating people to step up and do some of the things that we need to do to invite guests. If we could get guests in the door, I felt we would pretty surely get them to sign up. So at our officer meeting, I suggested having a contest and would divide into Star Wars and Star Trek teams. And that was met with a big, blah. Why would we do that? I hadn't hit the right motivation. Star Wars and Star Trek is pretty controversial in my house, but obviously not with this group. So someone suggested, what about Harry Potter? And if we did Harry Potter, I would immediately want to be House of Slytherin. And someone else said, and I would like to be Gryffindor. And before I knew it, the group, some of whom knew nothing about Harry Potter, had divided themselves into the houses. For those of you who may not be Harry Potter fans, I need to take just a minute so I don't go into deep jargon about Harry Potter. Harry Potter is based on some children's books in which it's children ages 10 to 18 who go to a private school who are divided into houses. So I will mention some of the houses of the Harry Potter school: Slytherin, Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff. As we divided into teams, even those who knew nothing about Harry Potter seemed to get a little excited and wanted to work on this effort. And over a 6-week period, people received recognition for both their effort that they made, did they invite guests, and for the results that they received. Did the guest come to the meetings? And They even received more recognition if the guest turned into members. This so excited our area director, who was the president of another nearby club, that he invited his club to join us. And soon we had a competition of 4 different teams going. In the end, Slytherin won. We had guests come, 13 different guests come, and we turned about a half a dozen of them into members. My secret motivation for all of this, getting guests there could turn into members, was really to help our club members become comfortable with asking guests. Because I find in Toastmasters, a lot of people are very uncomfortable inviting people to come to the meetings, and even more uncomfortable feeling that they're pushing people to actually join. Even though I myself I feel very comfortable doing that, because I know that people are probably there for a good reason, and if I can find out that reason and how we can best achieve their goals, I can help them see how Toastmasters meets those goals. So all of that, we promised a party. At the end, the featured guest at the party would be the winners, the House of Slytherin, as it turned out. People received acknowledgement for the achievements. Did you bring a guest? You got points if you did. We had team leads, and they were named team leads, the House of, the leader of the House of. And if you were part of a group, whether you knew anything about Harry Potter. And even without really knowing all of this, I had actually hit upon the 4 types of motivation in crafting this contest. So let me explain a little bit more about the different types. And as I do so, if you received the handout, you'll see I've written brief notes on that handout about the types of motivation. Because when I'm through with explaining the types, I'm actually going to ask you to answer a question in the chat room about which type you think you might be. So the first type of motivation is that of recognition. And these individuals really enjoy attention for the contributions they have made to the group. Now, don't get me wrong, when I explain all of these, there could be downsides to each of them. It's not that somebody just wants the recognition, like a pat on the back. The important part of it is they really enjoy making a contribution to the group, and they enjoy that kind of acknowledgement. I have a good friend who really has taught me the value of this type of motivation. She really appreciates affirmations. And in doing so, she herself is very generous with her affirmations about the kind of contributions that people make, either to her in her life or to her for the kind of contributions she makes for a group. Think about this could be a great person that when you want to stand up and really acknowledge the effort that someone has made, they're always seeing the kind of effort someone makes. So if you might be motivated by recognition yourself. And that means you kind of enjoy noting that people note that you have made that kind of contribution. You might be somebody who's more motivated by achievement. This wouldn't surprise you if a lot of Toastmasters say, yes, I'm motivated by achievement, because we like to accomplish goals. Georgina's speech was a perfect example. While she is not thrilled with it being online now and the meetings being online, she is determined that she will get better at that and overcome her fear of it. Georgina, in this case, is very results focused, even though her initial motivation is probably to maintain contact and relationships with people. You may be somebody who is motivated by the kind of influence that you achieve through a title or through a status. I have to admit that's me, and for a long time, I was kind of embarrassed to admit it. I thought people would think I just want to be here because I want the title for something. But what I really enjoy is being able to influence a wider world. That's why I enjoy the role of president so much, because I can see the possibilities of growth for my club and for my members as members of that club. You might be motivated mostly, you might be a type that's motivated by how much you enjoy being part of a group. And again, I would say Toastmasters is a great place for this. If you've ever attended a Toastmaster conference or convention, you know we love to talk Toastmasters. We enjoy being part of the group of Toastmasters. So I think I've given you a pretty good explanation of the types of motivation. And what I'd really like is for you to take a minute to in the chat room to note, do you think you are motivated more by recognition? That is, do you enjoy having people notice that you've made a contribution? Do you think you are motivated by achievement? That is, do you really like getting the job done? Do you think you are motivated primarily by status, as in you like being able to influence the group? Or are you mostly motivated by affiliation? That is, you enjoy being part of something bigger than yourself, that accomplishes something larger than what you could do by yourself. And if you could just take a minute to type those in, and then we'll give Ray a moment to let me know kind of what he's seeing for results.
Read them off. I'm seeing a lot of achievement, affiliation, belonging to a group, which is a bit of it all. Achievement and recognition. So people liking to be recognized for their efforts. Achievement and status, I see. Recognition and achievement. Achievement, status, affiliation, recognition. So a lot of confirmation here. Status. And yeah, status, achievement, and recognition, also followed by status. So there's a tiered response here. Status by affiliation.
Great, thank you, Ray. I am glad you see by your answers that there is a bit of complexity to this. In fact, I noticed one of the workshops for our convention this year, hope you've all signed up for that, it's free, coming up the end of the month, is that we really, as leaders, we can't really motivate anyone because motivation is actually an intrinsic. That means it's internal to us. What I am motivated by is very specific to me, and while we have some types and we can understand that, what I really do as the leader is I establish the structure by which people who are motivated in those different types can achieve their best through the structure I set up. So I want to take a minute just to talk about what kinds of structure I'm talking about. As a leader, I'm talking about being able to set some goals that people want to achieve, so that those people who are achievement focused, they want to work towards what you're working on. As a leader, I'm talking about setting up the kind of structure. So the people who are primarily affiliated, they want to build relationships with people in the group. I did a lot of team facilitation for a long time. And when I would work with groups, I would have to ask people who were really achievement focused. They would say things to me like, can't we just get to the task? Can't we just get the job done? I just want to get in and get the work done. And yet I knew that there were people who were probably participating in this group who really wanted to get to know people a little bit more and know that they mattered to the group in order to get on board with the task. So every team lead needs to set up a structure where you've got a little bit of time to balance both the relationship building that some people need and the results and task focus that some people need. If you've got people who are strong affiliation in your group, sign them up to help you with things like the icebreakers or the team building activity. These are going to be the people who are likely to know that somebody's birthday or a special event is coming up, or something that's happened in someone's life that might be significant enough that it's impacting their efforts. Tap into that strength of those people and use them. So I set up enough structure for success, but I also want to provide enough autonomy that people can feel that they're really making a contribution. And they're not just a warm body that I might need to fill a seat, but they're really They're there because I need them to make a significant contribution to the effort. And I don't know where that effort's going to take us particularly. I have this goal in mind. And here I set this structure up by a team. And I say, how do we build together the organization that we're going to need? And that's where the achievement people often come in too. They like things to be really organized. They also tend to ask a lot of questions. And in answering their questions, you can find you can go a long way to getting the results that you desire. In terms of status, those people who might like to know that they're influencing always want to pay attention as a leader. Where are we actually heading? And where is our progress along the way? And then what have you contributed to that? Or how can you imagine that we could possibly do that? They might be big picture thinkers. And they'll help you understand where you are in terms of progress, because they'll always keep the end in mind. If you've got people who really enjoy status or are motivated by status on your team, what you might think about doing for them is letting them know that you're reporting to the higher ups in your organization and letting them know how your group is doing. Or better yet, make them the people who are up front in giving any kind of report out. If you're working with a corporate club, for example, these might be the people that are liaisoning with the management of your organization to let them know, here's how Toastmasters is benefiting us and our organization. Here's how our members are doing. So you can imagine, or I actually do want you to imagine for a minute, being a team lead where you're trying to balance the needs of people who are motivated by different things. Someone who might enjoy attention for their contributions, that recognition. They might like a party at the end. They might like weekly report outs where you're telling them, here's an update of what this team is doing, and thank you for your contributions. That's happening to me on a team I'm on right now, where we've got 4 small work groups working. And each week I try to recognize what someone has done that's been particularly helpful for us achieving our goals. Imagine you're working with someone who is really achievement focused. I once worked with someone who many years ago, and I was serving as president of a parent-teacher association, a club. And this person was serving as the treasurer, and she had been so helpful to me all year long. And I knew that I needed to select someone who could help me for the following year to serve in that role as president. She had stepped up to everything I'd asked her to do, and I was so impressed with her work ethic. I asked her if she would serve as president. And she said, oh, I have to think about that. And I, because I'm status focused, thought, what's to think about? You get a chance to, your influence is greater, you can do more. And she got back to me a couple of days later and she said, you know, Mary, really, what I find really is helpful and what I really want to do, so you want to reward me, give me a bigger task to do. I really like to be behind the scenes. I want to support you as best I can. I don't want that upfront role at all. It was really my first realization that people were motivated by very different things. And I appreciated her knowing that about herself and being honest with me. Not all achievement people are just behind the scenes. I gave you my example of my team last year and how much Slytherin had won and by how much they had won by. And when I was describing to that team about motivation and what I've learned, no surprise to me at that point that the team lead of Slytherin raised his hand and said, I am very achievement focused. Slytherin won by double the number of points of any of the other teams. So I learned he was very achievement focused, and he did his job and really motivated his team to get those guests in the door. If you're setting up a team, imagine, well, I've talked about the status person, but let's talk a minute about affiliation. Because affiliation can at the same time be very underserved by its team members, because they often go about doing the very quiet work of relationship building. I think of these people as the glue that holds the team together. And I have to tell you, sometimes as a person who is more motivated by the influence that our efforts are going to give, I often forget about the small things. And I've asked for mentoring from individuals to help me remember somebody's birthday. Let me know when something is coming up. Let me know what someone has done. And these are the people I can turn to say, help me remember this. These are my mentors in recognition, really. So when you think about building a team, imagine having something for everyone that's going to strike at their motivation type. And this implies that you're actually getting to know them a bit. And that's also an important aspect of this work, that you do get to know these team members. Some of the kinds of questions you might ask them, I like, that's why I go to a party, a title, a task, a team, because you might ask them at the end of all of this, what would you like as a result of this? What would your recognition be? And this is a different, like acknowledgement's a little different than the recognition. But how would you like to be acknowledged for this? Would you like a party? Can I order a plaque? What about a trophy? Would you work for a trophy? Or would a trophy be acknowledged? That's something that's important to you. Would you like another effort? And let's just keep working on another team as long as we're together doing something. One of my favorite team efforts was a high performance leadership project that I did. And I think this wraps up very nicely the types of motivation and a way that they played out with this group. We had past international president Ted Corcoran coming for a visit to our district. Many of you are familiar with Ted Corcoran. He's from Ireland. He was actually coming on a visit to District 21, and District 21 graciously let us know the dates he was coming and said, are there any other districts that would like Ted to visit? I didn't know Ted well, and I invited Ted to visit District 32, and he said yes. And this was going to be about 6 weeks from that time that Ted would be there. We had about 6 weeks then to pull a group together and say, what is it that Ted could do in our district that would be satisfactory? So I hurriedly, at one of my advanced club meetings, put a call out for a team. And my pitch was, I have a big event coming up. It's important to our district. It could potentially be important to building new clubs or to members, but we don't know what the event is going to be yet. I just have a date and I have a keynoter. If you are interested in building some new skills related to marketing or outreach, get in touch with me. I could use your help and we can learn together. If you have those skills, get in touch with me. I could use your help and we can work together. What this did was work with a lot of the motivations that a lot of different people who responded had. We had those who were very achievement focused, working on a very tight deadline to accomplish something that was going to have a spectacular influence. So those people who were affiliation were really drawn to this. We had people who were going to be able to get to know Ted Corcoran, a past international president, which many of us don't get an opportunity to. It's rare unless you go to convention and get to meet them, but they don't necessarily come to us. So it would hit those people who really wanted to get to know others and how the Toastmasters operated more. And in 6 weeks, we put together a pretty remarkable 3 events, actually. One was a marketing event that resulted in some great club leads. Ted was very pleased with that. He got to meet a lot of different people in the community. We put together a workshop for Ted, which we had about 100 attendees, and Ted got to describe how you write a speech in 10 minutes. He also loved that. And we also put together a recognition event for district leaders. So they had a little bit of one-on-one time in case they wanted to know a little bit more about leadership in Toastmasters. It was pretty remarkable. And one of the things that pleased me most about this was there was a woman who volunteered, and as she approached me with her to volunteer, she said, "I don't know what I can do for you at all, but it just sounds so exciting to me to be part of this that I want to be part of it." She was so jazzed by this work that she used that model when she served later as a division director to motivate her area directors to help them achieve distinguished status. And she actually gave the same pitch that I did. If you don't know how to do something, let's learn together. If you have the skills, could you contribute them to the group? I really enjoyed that experience and knew then that working with teams, it feeds my soul and my spirit. So for you, can you imagine the possibilities for how you might be able to build teams knowing this a little bit more about motivation now? And I'd love to hear in the chat if you have any responses. And we will have some question and answer time for this also. But is there an example that you might have? So I do want to give a bit of time for you to, I can imagine I've just given you a ton of information. And if you might want to be able to use these or understand more about how to use these motivation types, that you've got some questions for it.
I've got two comments that have just come up. One was just trying to understand what they are trying to accomplish to achieve by participating. One comment says, "I know at work I feel myself in our department isn't acknowledged as much." So whereas another department is. So that's a thing. Jin says, "You're absolutely right. Motivation is internal and motivated by self-improvement." And a continuation of the earlier comment, "It is because they are able to do their work. Our supervisor is very awry and always acknowledges us. So the manager, not as much." So they're getting recognition from different areas, which is I guess, motivating or demotivating, as the case may be.
Right. So I want to go back to the comment that someone made about, I noticed that there are other departments who are getting more recognition for their work than our department is. And I would just offer a suggestion that if you could talk to your manager, my guess is that that kind of public recognition isn't important to that manager. And they either may not care about it enough to make it something that they push with their management, or they may not know how to do it, although I'm guessing that they see some good models for it. So it may be that since it isn't important to them, they don't necessarily know it's important to the other team members that are working for them. So you might want to suggest or let them know that it's something that you think is going to help you in your career if you could get that kind of notice within your organization.
Yeah, I got a couple more comments coming up. Frustrates some people working in a team, which I can completely understand. Company department recognition. I think it's because people don't know how we do from the supervisor. And just one comment about appreciating the handout. So it's a good reference that I posted in the chat. For those of you who don't know, I actually posted the file of the handout you were talking about in the chat for them to download.
Oh, wonderful.
So that is there as well.
Thank you.
So that's it.
Great. All right. So sometimes I get questions about, why don't people sign up for roles at clubs? Do you ever have that in your clubs? People seem to really be reluctant to sign up for a meeting role, particularly speaker or Toastmaster, especially Toastmaster. And you know how important, well, I think you call them chairman in your district, or at least in this club, it's called a chair. In other clubs, it might be called the Toastmaster of the meeting. So that person who really has to kind of organize the agenda and get things going. And my belief is if you knew enough about what people wanted out of their Toastmasters opportunities, that you could help them see how stepping in as that lead, that's the lead of that meeting. And leading a meeting can be really invaluable towards their understanding for how they're a better listener, achieving their goal of leading a team, even a small team effort like a weekly meeting or a monthly meeting, how it builds those leadership skills. Few people are in Toastmasters just to speak. There are a few, always, I've recognized that. But people are often reluctant to sign up for roles because they don't know what it really needs in the role, how to do it. Mentors are a fabulous response to that. In fact, I can't say enough about mentoring to help you motivate people or for people to discover their internal motivation. Having a mentor can do so much in helping you or people that you work with double the amount of effectiveness or success by whatever measure you have as success. A mentor is kind of an accountability buddy almost. So if I want to do something and I know I've got a meeting coming up with a mentor and I've been reluctant to do it and I'm brave enough to admit my vulnerability to that person, they can really help me overcome my fears and my concerns and accomplish so much more. Someone asked a question of me last week, what's the difference between motivation or recognition and incentives? And I thought that was a really good point. Incentives are those external things that we'd like to provide that acknowledge people for their efforts. For instance, the example I gave you about our club contest, we had an incentive. Both the winning team got to claim champion victory, but we actually had put some money into a pot and said we would have the members of that team split whatever pool of dollars we ended up with. And the pool of dollars was dependent on how many new members we gained. Unfortunately, we hit just about that time, the March period, when we ended up going on Zoom. We never ended up having the party we had planned or the dollars that we had planned. We had to regroup in a different way. But the dollar amount, the pool of money, was an external incentive. I don't know how many people I would say it really didn't motivate people, but what it does is it shows people that as a leader, you're willing to put some resources into them making an extra effort. Incentives are very short term. And I think if you really want to use incentives effectively, think through very carefully what you're really trying to accomplish and what you want people to pay attention to. If you, for instance, want people to invite guests to your club and incentive, and they're not very motivated to do that because they have a fear of often people asking, give them the training that they need and recognize the incentive then becomes the number of guests they invite and not necessarily the results. Because what you're really trying to do is build the skill of overcoming their fear, building their confidence of inviting people. You give them the external incentive to get them the push that they need, but what really moves them forward is that they now have the skills that's going to benefit them for many, many aspects of their life and not just Toastmasters club or meeting.
One comment that stands out that was after the last QA was that we thinking others function like us. Mm-hmm. So we project our own values onto the people around us in that sense. One person says, I can be motivated by any of these depending on the situation. So multiple different motivations with recognition, status, whatever, as all have been part of their life when they look at it overall.
Let me say for a moment then about what happens if any one of these motivational types is overdone. There is, as in anything, there is always a danger that if you don't understand your motivational type, or you misinterpret what someone's is, that it can seem more negative than positive. I told you I was a little embarrassed to admit that I was status. I worried that people would think I was really ego-driven. And status really isn't about ego, but if it's overdone, and that's all you talk about is what kind of title you might get, or that you want a title, or the promotion is so important to you, then it can seem to people like you're really ego-driven. So recognition, if that's what what drives you, is kind of that contribution, the attention you might get for your contributions. Overdone, that can seem like you're really needy and you're constantly wanting people to feed how well you're doing. And it really can show a lack of confidence in your own abilities. If you're too achievement focused, that can seem like you don't really care about your team members and how much success, what their success might look like to help them achieve what they might want to. So you might just move forward, think of you've heard of these, like the star quality person who does more than anybody else. Overdone, that can feel like you've left people out and you don't really care about them. I mentioned the status can seem like you might be egocentric. And the last one is affiliation. That can seem like you don't actually care about what the group is doing as long as you're kind of just along for the ride, as long as you're part of the group. But if you're really affiliation motivated, then what you really want is to be part of something bigger than yourself. And often I think about people who are leading nonprofit organizations who really want to contribute to a greater good of the world and want to be part of a group that's doing that. So some of the cancer walks that we have, when you join a group like that, because you have a love of the goal itself or a love of the outcomes that group is going to achieve, and you're willing to put your effort into it. But any one of those, if overdone, can be damaging to a group also. So you want to try to find that right balance and notice in yourself what's happening. Well, I do hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit more about motivation and find some of the things that you've heard today that could be useful for you as you're leading, whether you're leading a group of Toastmasters or leading in your work area or making a contribution as a team member and maybe even need to manage up a little bit to understand what might be motivating your manager so that you can help them in turn help you get the kind of acknowledgement and recognition that is meaningful to you. Because in the end, whether you like a party, a task, a title, or a team, what we all seek is the kind of structure and conditions and goals that help us feel that what our efforts, what we're doing is meaningful to us and meaningful to others. So thank you, Advanced Leaders Lab, for inviting me to be here today, and I'm looking forward to feedback. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mary, so much. Your knowledge and experience really shows, and we can learn a lot about motivating our teams, especially for Toastmasters. And I think it would work with family members too.
You have tuned into and are viewing the District 96 Toastmasters YouTube channel. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel.